Hi, I'm Jonathan Jay, and welcome to Dealmakers TV, where I meet and interview professional deal makers, people who buy businesses for a living, and professional advisors, people who should be part of your business buying deal team. I want to show you the tactics and the strategies, the tips and the tricks that will make your next acquisition more successful. Today, I'm talking to Peter Hollis. Now, I started working with Peter last year, and he's just bought his first £1 business. So today, we're going to find out how he did it and what he's learned. Welcome, Peter. So your background, I believe, is in IT, and you've been thinking about buying a business for a little while. Tell us the thought process behind that, would you?
So you're right. So thank you for having me here. We are an IT service company, but we have our operations both in Croatia as well as the UK. But the UK is more of a sales office or a virtual office. So what we wanted to do was set up an office in the UK to take some of the pressure off the guys having to travel over from Croatia so often. I'd already formed a team, so we set up about 6 years ago. And so I thought, instead of forming a team this time, why don't I go and buy an organisation or buy a company and buy a team? So that's where the journey started. And as I mentioned before, is I started how I think traditionally you would start, which is I go on the internet, I go and find some brokers, I ring up some brokers. It's all very exciting because they give me lots of information and lots of opportunities. And I start having phone calls and meetings with people. I did fall into the trap, I must say, where I went around the countryside and you have a 4-hour journey, 2-hour meeting, I need to find out that maybe they won't be selling their business to you. And I did a lot of that, and I found that, I'd made the decision that that's what we're going to do at the end of 2018. I felt as if I was getting some momentum, and then it kind of went crashing down because you actually realise that getting your opportunities from business brokers, you're not potentially going to buy a business from a business broker because it's going to be overvalued, wrong expectations. And I kind of was doing a little bit of this, is that you feel you are moving forward, and then you realise that people want a multiple of 30 on their EBITDA. They want a multiple of 20 on their EBITDA. Because
the broker put this idea in their head that it was going to be worth a fortune, and quite clearly it isn't.
So then I came across some of your posts on LinkedIn and started going through this. I think I was in Croatia for a weekend, and I kind of went through some of the videos and some of the blogs. And I went, okay, so I'm on the right journey, as in I would like to buy a business, but maybe I'm doing it a little bit wrong, as in I'm approaching it in the wrong way. So I went to one of your introductory courses, and that led me to joining the DMA last year, which I think our first one was in March or April, if I remember correctly. And over the journey of that, really that started giving me some tools to sort of challenge some of my preconceived ideas. I'm going to introduce a deal flow. So I'm going to go out and find my own deal flow. I should be challenging maybe some of my multiples. I think maybe in hindsight I was being too generous. I thought I was giving a fair deal, but actually probably I was being over fair. So to challenge some of my thinking around valuations. Great opportunity to meet like-minded people as well.
Very much so.
And that really started. So starting to build some momentum, thinking that we were on the right track. You gave us kind of a list of some of the sites that we could look at as well, and one of them was IPBid. And along the way, something came up out of IPBid, and I ended up doing my first £1 deal. So,
fantastic. So tell me, in terms of time, because everyone I meet says, I'm interested in buying a business, Jonathan, but I'm not sure if I've got time to do it. So what would you say to people based upon your experience? Because you said you were driving around the country meeting businesses face to face, and you know that I say, don't do that. Get them to come to you, and this is the methodology to get them to come to you.
Yes.
So in terms of time, how much time invested would you say got you up to that point of buying that first business?
So from a time perspective, I definitely was an operator in my current existing business. And because we're located in 2 countries, I could spend anywhere up to 20 nights in Croatia. So it was quite a big investment from a time perspective, and I was wearing many hats. So I was quite busy. I think by joining the course and the couple of days in Richmond originally, kind of almost consolidated what I was thinking. And then it was a process of every week just do a little. And a little might be write my first letter. A little might be make sure I sign up to the website so that I can get some emails, check my emails each day. From an actual time perspective in regards to the acquisition, I started on a Wednesday. The offer was in on the Tuesday to be accepted by the following Thursday. So that was about a week. And then we actually completed a week later. So effectively, from a time perspective, there was 2.5 weeks for that acquisition. But leading up to that, I didn't actually have to do a lot in fairness. Leading up is just a little on a regular basis. Make sure you get your letters out. Make sure you read the emails. Make sure you follow up on some of the opportunities that are being presented to you. But I felt I wasn't looking for a distressed business, but I felt that from a starting point to actually do a distressed acquisition was a great opportunity. It's quick, which I like. It means that I don't have to go down doing heads of terms and then another 16 weeks worth of due diligence and then only for someone to fall out. So for me, the speed of it was good. But what you have to do is just manage the risk of it, isn't it? Is understand what you're getting into and make sure you've got the right risk mitigations and right processes in place. And also the fact that I did it in my sector I think was helpful because that means I'm looking at a business which is broadly similar to what we can do. It's an IT business. I've got a lot of developers already in Croatia, so if anything really goes wrong, I know I can just throw things at them and they will fix it. It wasn't the ideal location, but it wasn't a bad location. It was in Chester, so for me that's 3.5 hours in the car, or alternatively about 2 hours on the train. So the train journey is not too bad, and it all just fell into place.
And we always say, don't we, buy something in a sector that you understand, because then your learning curve is really about buying a business. It's not buying a business and a sector.
No, and I'd agree. In some ways that helps because I could deal with the buying the business side of it and not really have to worry about what is the business actually doing. I would hate to have to learn two things at once in that sense. And it's odd because even though I come from a business background, I'm actually quite technical. And one of the developers in the acquisition company said to me a couple of weeks ago, he said, "Oh, and you must know everything about the code." And I said, "I haven't even looked at the code." And he just looked at me, and normally I would, because normally I'd be invested in that sense. And I said, "No, because I'm comfortable that A, you're selling it already. B, if it goes wrong, we know we can fix it. And in a risk profile, that what we were talking about at the time is quite low for me from a risk perspective. I'm more interested in these things over here." And so for me not to actually be opening up my laptop and looking at code was quite different. And I think he was quite surprised because he just assumed that I would be all over the code. Well, actually I was more interested in restructuring the business and fixing some
And this
things.
is the shift, isn't it?
It is.
From being the operator who, in your situation, would be involved with the code, to being the investor, the deal maker, the true owner who looks at the business structure, other acquisitions, how do we grow the group, and so on.
No, I agree. And I think for me, or actually probably for my team, one of the key benefits is, we talked for the last 2 or 3 years, me stepping away from the business, spending more time focusing on sales and less on delivery, less on the day-to-day. And every year we've got a 1st of April balance date. I do my presentation to the company and we'd talk about the same thing. And then about the 3rd year I said, look, I feel like I'm repeating myself because one day I will step out of the business. Well, this forced me to step out of the business. And what I've seen is that the guys, in particular in Croatia, have really thrived. It's given them some great opportunities. It's got their boss off their back a little bit. But it's also new opportunities for them. I think it's quite exciting. There are things that we're doing now which they would never be exposed to. I'm asking people to do reviews of the existing code base. They're looking, the company I bought was approximately 20 years old. Some of the people are looking, or some of the team are looking at things that they wouldn't have seen because some of it dates back 15 years ago. So I'm explaining to them, 15 years ago, this is how we did it, this is why it was done. We're just moving it into a modern software approach. But for them, it's quite interesting because that's what they read about in textbooks. Well, actually, now they actually get to see it. We're going to get better at the transition side, but we're going to build a transition framework. So it's a bit make it up as you go, the transition. But that's quite good for some of the team too, because then they have to start thinking about risk a little bit more. So for them, it widens their horizon. So that in itself is a benefit. A, the boss is focused on something else, but also the opportunity for the existing team is just
So are
huge.
you saying then that the acquisition has actually benefited your existing business as well?
Hugely.
That's interesting.
And I think also at Stress Tester, it kind of almost said, what are we not good at? And some of the things were quite surprising, in fairness, is we do a lot of remote work. My main team is based in Croatia. We sell back into the UK. So we thought we were good at remote working, and I think we are. But what we were struggling with is culturally, or how do you bring the acquisition into the existing team? How do we actually bring them part of the Cognitas culture? And it turns out we weren't as good at that as we thought we would be. How do we onboard new developers? A lot easier in Croatia than onboarding someone remotely, it turns out. So we've had to do things around a little bit of process. We've had to update some things. We've had to reflect as to what we're good at and not good at, and put some plans in this year in particular as to how we're going to have a stronger platform in order to buy different companies and onboard them.
And how has this acquisition impacted the overall group? So did it increase the size of your overall business by 10%, 20%? What did it have?
I didn't buy it for a revenue reason. I'll come back to the revenue reason. One of the challenges we had, we set up as a joint venture originally, which I bought out in 2015, but we do a lot of white labelled work, so we don't have referenceability because we're working on behalf of someone. So we've got some household names that we support, and large recognisable blue chip companies' household names, but we can't actually refer to them, so it's hard for us to win business because they say, well, what have you done? We can't talk about it, it's someone else's customer. So for me, the company we acquired, they are very much embedded in councils, so they have approximately 60 to 70 councils that they're working with. So that in itself was a benefit. Now I've got on the preferred supplier list for 60 or 70 councils. They had some recurring revenue, so we do a lot of project-based work, some managed services, but also project-based work. So we stopped now we've got a steady stream, so that helped. I think those were the two key things, was the referenceability and the recurring revenue. Off the back of it, in theory, I'm buying a loss-making business. They thought they were breaking even. If you look at the books properly, they were making a loss. So I wasn't expecting for it to contribute massively to my net profit or my gross profit. So sales-wise, it probably added about 40% to our sales. Profitability on day one, it added probably minus 50% to our profitability on day one. But we've taken, so if I acquired on the 16th of August, I wasn't actually in the country when I acquired it, so I didn't set foot in the building until the 4th of September, I think, if that was a Monday. Between the 4th of September and the end of November, which was their balance date, we've turned a loss-making business to a run rate of a profit-making business. By the time 31st of March this year, which is my balance date, so we're moving all the balance dates and stuff, the following 12 months, we've effectively got 100,000 net profit business off the back of it.
Really?
So we've taken quite a loss-making business through to a profitable business.
Good.
So I wasn't looking at it from a profitability or an expansion
But there is also some profit as well.
Definitely.
So you were seeing it from a strategic acquisition.
Correct,
because it gave you, but for the two things that there's 2 points you raised.
It was access into a market that we couldn't get into. It gives us referenceability. There were skills within that business and staff members within that business which I thought we needed, and as it turns out, there's some really good hires off the back of the acquisition. Well, we've acquired some really good skills and resources. So the overall impact, it's hard to quantify. There's definitely going to be a positive EBITDA impact, but I think it's we've got better as a business, so it's the catalyst for that. We've turned it round and we can start probably cross-selling into it. We haven't quite cross-sold yet, but we're selling better. And overall, it was just my learning curve, and the fact that I stepped away from the business, I think, was one of the key things.
Very interesting. And you said earlier that you were out of the country when the deal completed.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
So life doesn't stop when you go on holiday. So I think it came up on IPBid on a Tuesday, and I was in Canada. We were on our 2-week holiday in Canada and the States. So I sent away the NDA. No, I think because IPBid, you register some interest.
Yes.
And I like things moving quickly. So I was a little bit frustrated because 24 hours later they hadn't got back to me. So I found out what the business was. I searched my database and identified based on some very minimal information and went, it's one of these 6 and it must be that based on the project name. So we'd actually done the desktop due diligence. I'd looked at their accounts, I'd gone through their social media, I had looked at their website. Effectively, we had done all of that before the NDA even turned up. So about Thursday or the Friday, I finally got the information pack, which didn't really add much. Went back with 15, 20 questions, which they gave to me over the weekend. They gave me information over the weekend, VAT returns, customer lists, indicative contracts and stuff like that. I reviewed all of that, I think somewhere between the States and maybe Toronto, I think.
Okay.
Went back to them, had 4 phone calls to different people across that time. I think we got back to the UK on the Sunday, put the offer in on the Tuesday because I had something to do on the Wednesday. And then the bids were closing on the Thursday effectively. So that was great. I thought that was fine, except, and this sounds like I travel a lot, but we were due to go to New Zealand because it was the summer holidays and I'm a New Zealander and the kids and I were going over there the following week. So I was unsure how I was going to complete the deal when we got the deal on the Friday. So the deal came through on the Friday afternoon, which I thought I'd missed it. I was really keen to win, and I know you're not meant to be too hooked on a business, but strategically it felt like the right fit. And so what I did differently, I'll come back to the New Zealand part, but what I did differently was I'm a numbers person, I'm quite analytical, and I forget the human element. And this time around, I really thought about the human element and going, I want to win. There's only going to be 2 types of buyers. Those who are going to buy and fire everyone, and those who are going to continue on with the vision. And because of the legacy, it's a 20-year-old family-run company, the vision for them and the legacy was really important. So I literally, to win the deal, I put all my cards on the table and I said, this is how I value your business when I was talking to their CEO. I value it like this. I said, if I'm going to buy it and wish to retain your staff and continue the business, this is how much I would value it at. If I was going to buy the company and fire all your staff and keep the revenue, this is how much I'd value it. It turns out that firing the staff I would pay more for it. I said, so do you agree? Do you agree with my valuation? Are we kind of in a similar ballpark? And she agreed. So I said, that's fine, but you've got all this debt and most of it's got personal guarantees on it. So even after I buy the company, you're going to be hit up for all the personal guarantees, because I said, whatever I'm going to pay for it does not equal your personal guarantees. I said, but for me that doesn't work, because actually I want you in my business and I don't want you on a Friday selling your business only for a Monday to be bankrupt in my business. I said, that doesn't really work for me. And she went, okay. So I said, what I'll do, and I said, I know that the administrators won't think that they're going to get this offer, but I will buy your company for £1 and I'll take away all your debt and I'll take on your PGs. The rationale being is I want to clear your debt, give you a fresh start. I'm comfortable with managing the debt out of the business, but that means that I know that you can come into the office on the Monday with a clean slate and restart again. And that went down really well. Well, it must have, because they sold me the business. But it was funny because when I put the offer in on the Tuesday, and literally I structured the offer and said, it's £1, I'll do this, I'll take over this debt, I'll take over these PGs. I know that they won't have any cash, so I will inject some working capital in, and I will pay the business administrator, because it was almost pre-pack at that stage. I'll pay the administrator's fees because there'll be no cash in the business. They didn't read all the bullet points, I think, because literally the email came back and said, well, that's great, it's £1, but how do we get paid? And at that point I suddenly realised there must be an agenda for a business administrator type person. I think they're business recovery. So I said, look, I've already dealt with that. So I've dealt with the fact that I'll pay the lawyer on your side, I will pay your fees, we've already committed to that, and took away any of their objections, which for them was how would they get paid. On the side of the seller, effectively they're saying, well, that's great from our perspective because Peter's going to take away all our problems, which ultimately was their personal guarantees. I think in reading through the lines, I think a lot of other people put in offers for assets, but the assets would have left the people with the personal guarantees. And also, if I understood reading through the anecdotes, because they're all under NDA, so they shouldn't discuss it with me, is that the offers were extremely low as well. So the asset purchases would have definitely left a lot of debt.
So actually, your deal had the personal element, and I know we have always talked about this an awful lot, because that's the missing link in so many of these deals. It's not all about the numbers, it's about how you can assist the owner to hold their head high, and in this case, not be concerned about the creditors following them even after the sale of the business.
Yes.
So you structured something that worked from the perspective of the vendors, but also because you were paying the administrators fees, worked from their perspective as well, because clearly they want to get paid for the work that they've done.
Yes, yeah. And I think that was one of the things I learned from last year, because I know for me it's easy to look at code, look at your laptop, think of numbers and be very analytical, go get all the income statements in and work out some numbers. And that's almost was my approach, is I thought I was being fair, as in to say, I'll give you a multiple like this is how I calculate it, and walk someone through. But actually that doesn't resonate with people, does it? Ultimately you want to understand what is their issue, what is their problem that you're going to solve. And I think for me that was almost a great learning curve for me, was to go take a step back, think of what the seller is going through, think of what their concerns are, and then just address those concerns. And as a result, I ended up with a business where I got 81 customers, I think, for £1, 60-ish PSLs into councils, and then the fun started. So, but again, I think a lot of people ask, well, but how did you get your SPV, Peter? I mean, well, when I wrote to them, I said, I don't know what my SPV is because I haven't even set it up, so I don't know which company is owning it. I'll do that once you've accepted my offer on a Friday night.
Absolutely.
So on a Friday night, and then the solicitor actually started on their side drafting up the agreement. On the Friday night, once they'd accepted my offer, again, I said, I've bought it, but Company's House is not quite quick enough. Just put a placeholder in, but,
of course.
But this is the name.
Yes.
So the £12.50 that I spent in the 30 minutes, I wasn't concerned about. So I don't think you should get too hung up on those things. My only concern was, because I was off to New Zealand, was how do I sign the deal? That was the one thing I didn't understand. So my brother-in-law, he was a director on the SPV, so he was quite happy to be a director on the shell company. And I said, can you just do that in case you have to go up to Chester with your pound? It was how do we sign the document and how do I give them my pound?
Okay.
Because it was those two things. And so he signed up to the SPV. He's got really no risk at that level. And then we terminated him as the director after we completed the deal. And he was in place that while I was in New Zealand, in case that he needed to sign anything. So the following week, backwards and forwards with the lawyer, and we then completed the following Friday morning, I think, so about a week later, and settled there. And it turned out that I didn't actually need my brother-in-law as the director because it was all done electronically.
Yeah,
anyway.
absolutely, yes. So we've known each other for nearly a year now.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to know how that's been for you. I mean, what have I been able to help you with? And maybe there's some things that I'm not even aware of that were beneficial. And it was very interesting to say that the group itself, actually having that network and that peer group had a value, because I know that it does, but it's also very good to hear from other people that it has that value.
I think the key takeaway I got initially, and this was, I was coming to learn how to buy a single business, because I was going to buy my flagship company in the UK. That would give me my team. I wanted some sales and marketing people in the UK. If I got other things, administration, developers along the way, that's great, but I was going to buy my flagship company, and then we would go back to what we did before, which was organic growth. You know, we've always had sort of 15-20% a year growth. Sounds okay. And I thought I'd just stop there, and it was almost that idea of, why don't I do a buy and build effectively? And if I enjoyed it the first time round, why wouldn't I continue to repeat it? So I'm quite open with the team that I'm going into acquisition mode. We've got a target for this year. I said the only thing I don't know is how to build a business plan, so we're going to build a business plan on the existing plan, on the existing business, and we've done some changes, so we're going to do some profit sharing and stuff like that as part of it. And I said along the way we might pick up some acquisitions, but I don't know what acquisitions are going to walk through the door. So I think the idea of going into doing multiple acquisitions, I got from the course. I'd agree the support of other people and the inspiration of other people and the momentum of other people helps. John, Stephen, Rich, Ian, the stories, the WhatsApp groups, the have you sent letters. I was so excited. I don't normally get excited, but I was so excited when they accepted my deal. That wasn't even when we completed. It was almost an anticlimax, the completion. That's just paperwork, you know. But when because they were meant to tell me on the Friday morning, they said they'd tell me on the Friday, or let us know on the Friday morning. And I was kind of getting up to 1,300, 1,400. Oh, I've missed it. I can't believe I've missed it. And the day that afternoon, I was like so excited and invited the in-laws around and got the champagne out type of thing, which is not me at all. So I think it's that we're doing a shared journey, and
yes.
The shared journey also helps with, if I have a problem, I can reach out to people, and that means I can start on my journey knowing that I know enough people to not get out of depth, but also knowing that I don't need to know everything. So you start at the start, and the start is obviously deal flow, and then you turn the handle, and at some stage you'll start having meetings. And then you'll learn how to do meetings well, and you'll constantly learn. You'll then have to do heads of terms, and so why worry about heads of terms? If I haven't sent any letters, heads of terms are irrelevant. When I get up to the heads of terms, I will go back and learn about heads of terms and use the handbooks and for heads of terms. And it's just a process. And for me, it's knowing that it is a process, and I can start at the start and work my way through. I don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
I mentioned,
and I like what you say there about it being a process, because it is absolutely a process.
Yeah.
That if you don't know the process, if you haven't got a bird's eye view of what the process is, you don't quite know where you are in it. You know, are you at the beginning? Are you nearly at the end?
Yeah.
And we always feel something's more difficult than it really is if we can't see the wood for the trees and we don't have that clear step by step. Do this first, do this second.
But I think you can get lost in the process too, because I think if you spend too much time trying to learn the process, I think you need an overview so you know that it's going to be staged. You get your deal flow, you go have your calls, you have your meetings, heads of terms, due diligence, and then come out the other end with a completion and then do your transition. So that's great. So now that I know that, let's not think about the transition, let's not think about these things, let's actually start at the start and start doing. And I think the key is to start the doing element of it, start doing the deal flow, start getting the letters out there. Because without it, the completion is irrelevant, isn't it?
Why worry about what's going to happen 3-4 months down the line if we're not doing the first step today?
And I think it's that doing the first step, and I think as part of the group, I think it spurns people on. So I've publicly said, we'll send out 100 letters every week. I'm looking, and I've kind of done the maths on it, so 5,000 by the end. I'm going to have this many calls. This many calls will turn into this many meetings. And by the end of it, we'll do 2 acquisitions this year. That's my target. The size of the acquisition, don't know. The shape of the acquisition, don't know. Is it going to be 2 or is it going to be 4? We'll see. But I can scale up the letters or scale back the letters. I can kind of target the deal flow and stuff like that and shape it to hit the goal of 2 acquisitions. And I've said that, and we're just getting on and doing it, isn't it? And
yes.
We'll just see. So the guys go, well, what are you going to buy? The team in Croatia. And I'll go, well, I don't know. I know broadly what I'm going to buy. I know what I'm looking for. I don't know technically who I'm going to buy because the person hasn't spoken to me yet.
Absolutely.
But along the way, also, I've got another list, and so because of the way that the acquisition, the company in Chester that I bought, Transact, I found another list of potential targets, and so I almost run 2 lists. I've got the generic, I'll send out there and cast the net, and then I've got about another 150 companies where I'll craft a little bit more, and those are definitely key companies that I wish to contact and see if they'd like to sell, and some of them are single director, double directors, 65, it's all the right metrics.
So when we first started together about a year ago, you had one acquisition in mind, and that would be it.
Yes.
You wanted to, you invested in the program to get that acquisition as right as it could possibly be.
Yes.
But the hidden benefit that you weren't expecting a year ago is that you'd be sitting here talking to me like this.
Yes.
And saying, well, actually, why do I need to stop at 1? Why can't this be my new business activity, making acquisitions, rather than being a day-to-day operator?
Yes, and nothing happens overnight, but as I transition out of the day-to-day, and as the team stabilises and adjusts to that, as we get some additional layers and as we get some additional processes, this is what I'd like to do.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy typing on my computer. I just don't have time for it at the moment, It's so I did not anticipate that this would be at the start of a new journey, effectively. And it's a journey that you can control. Ultimately, you can. I know that it's. I don't know. I know that I wouldn't do anything over Christmas because we were finishing the transition. So we scaled back what we were doing from a lead generation perspective. And I wanted to target the start of January because I assumed everyone would have New Year's resolutions. They would, that's the time where you actually actively start deciding that it's too much and that we want to sell the business. And I know that over summer, if depending on what summer looks like, we might scale back over summer, but I can kind of almost control my lead generation.
So, which actually is very different to being an operator of a business that always hopes that next year is going to be better. You have very little control over that. You put a lot of effort in one year and not really get much out.
Yes.
But you can say, okay, I'm going to undertake these activities to make 1, 2, 3, 4 acquisitions during the course of the next 12 months. So it gives you a greater sense of control over the future of your business.
I think it does, and I think it it challenges how we're shaping the business as well, and it challenges how I want to structure the business, because I ultimately don't know. I broadly know there's going to be an IT. I broadly know what we're looking for, but you never know that you get some gems along the way, don't you? And then you suddenly go, so I've got a company, an org structure in mind. We've got vacancies in that org structure, which I'm in no hurry to fill, because along the way I will probably fill that off the back of the acquisitions. It gives another layer, and as we grow larger, that means it gives more opportunity to the team in Croatia as well. Actually now technically I've got a team in the UK. We've got a headcount up in Chester. So I think overall it just says, we have to work slicker. We're going to get bigger, so let's get some of the basic things in place. We didn't have payroll in the UK. Even though I'm not employed, I'm a director in the UK, but I'm employed, my work permit is in Croatia, but Cognitas hasn't had to have payroll in the UK. So I spoke to Kelly, through yourself, you referred me to Kelly Bater, and I said, there were a couple of things we wanted to do. A, help me with the acquisition from an HR perspective. I said, but can you also give me a framework? I want a good HR framework so that as we bring on new organisations and new companies, that we can actually bolt them into a very robust HR framework. So now we've got a better and a good up-to-date HR framework in the UK. And it's just building those frameworks, because I just want to bolt on. We're going to get a better transition framework, so as we transition people on and onboard new organisations. So I just think overall it's just improved the strength of the organisation.
So there's quite a transformation in a 12-month period.
Yes. And what I think will be interesting is in the next 12 months, because I was just learning. I kind of learnt by jumping into the fire panel or the fryer or whatever, by doing a £1 distressed acquisition. Will we do more distressed acquisitions? I would like to.
Who knows what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, you're going to have to put some effort in somewhere, and I like the speed of the transaction. It's taken us 4 months, I suppose, to stabilise the business, 5 months, and do some of the transition. But once we then get the processes in and we just start, just now that it's tidy and stable, I'm kind of going, well, what would I rather have done? Would 16 weeks of due diligence and that side of it, or would I rather transact quickly, understand the risk, and then we put the effort in improving the business? I don't know. I want to do a normal acquisition as well, so it's a non-distressed acquisition. So.
Peter, I'm extremely pleased for you. How do people get in touch with you?
So they can look me up on LinkedIn, or alternatively it's peter.hollis@cognitas.com if they want to drop me an email.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Peter. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and tap the little notification bell so that you can get an alert every time we upload a new video like this one. And also subscribe to my Business Buying Strategies podcast on iTunes. It is the most popular podcast in the world on buying a business. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.